Depending on your personal financial situation, borrowing from your 401k can be good, bad, or downright ugly. That's according to financial advisor Doug Flynn, co-founder of Flynn Zito Capital Management. Doug, I think we've got the point from Mary's story that you have to think hard about whether or not you're going to do that. And that 10% penalty, that alone is a hard decision to make. That's hard money to earn. But if you have to do it, how do you make it good?
Well, where you make it good is you first have to look and say, do I have a stable job that I'm going to be gainfully employed at for a number of years? And if you are, and for an example, if you have very high credit cards, balances and interest rates, some credit card rates are 20, 22, or even higher percent. The payback time on credit cards can be as much as 30 or more years. So here's where it can make sense, where you can streamline the payments, get it down to a 5-year payback, and pay yourself back with some interest at a much lower rate and be done with it at the end of 5 years. But that's really the key. The good comes in the fact that in the end, in 5 years, you will be done.
Discipline. You've got to do this. One thing you have always pointed out, I've always heard you say this, and I want to keep this graphic up while I'm talking about it. That last line where you say no debt and spending less. You feel that people have a threshold for debt, so they can get carried away and keep on running debt up. That's the real hard discipline here.
It really is. And so for an example, in the good, what you're trying to do there is you're trying to say, well, the only reason I'm using this is because I'm going to move myself forward. I'm actually going to spend less by spending less on the loan. But also when I'm done, now I have extra money at the end of each month, so now I can start building up some savings. So in those kind of short-term situations, it makes sense. Where it's not so good, where we get to the bad, is where if you pay off your credit card loans at the end of the 401k loan, when it's done, you've run your credit cards all the way back up, because now you've just wasted 5 years of possibly saving for retirement. You're 5 years older, and you're basically in the same situation you were before. So it's not good. It's not ugly. That's bad, because you haven't really moved forward, and that's where the discipline comes in. And people do. They have a threshold. If when they have $10,000 in credit cards, they might think twice about putting that extra thing on the credit card. But when there's zero, because they think, oh, I just paid it off, I don't have anything, lo and behold, it starts to creep its way back up. So that's where the discipline comes in.
Let's talk about the ugly right now. Where does it get worse than bad?
So where it gets really bad, and this is why for most people it likely doesn't make sense, is because they've essentially been people who've overspent their whole life, and they suddenly have money built up in their 401k that they can tap, and they're going to use it as a future extension of their income. So maybe, as an example, they have $2,000 a month of net pay, and they spend $3,000 a month, and they say, oh, look, I have some extra money I can tap. And they continue to spend that extra money every month. What's going to happen is you're going to blow through that and then end up with that debt as well, and no better off. So you have to say, I'm only going to do this if it's going to be an improvement in my situation when I'm done. You don't want to end up blowing the whole thing up for your retirement and be in the same situation or worse, and that's where it gets ugly.
Yeah, well, it could get worse because you're already paying a penalty to start with. So if you don't have this discipline, you're actually measurably worse off. Let's talk about alternatives. If you get to the point where you're considering doing this, what should you also have looked at?
Well, the first thing that you probably want to look at is, especially if you're a homeowner and you have some home equity built up in there, is a home equity loan, for a couple of reasons. One is the payment can be stretched out longer. The interest may be tax deductible to you if you have a tax bracket that makes some sense to. So presumably you went there first and maybe used that. But again, you don't want to take short-term debt like the dinner you had last week with friends and stretch it out over 10 or 30 years on a home equity. But that's a place where you get a little bit better rate and possibly tax deductions. You can the next place you can go is take a look at, banks have debt consolidation loans. They're higher than these other loan rates like 401k loans and home equity loans, but they're lower than credit card rates. There's also a finite amount that they'll allow you to take, so it doesn't solve the problem, but it might help you because you're lowering your interest rates from the 20s into maybe 10.
And not paying the penalty of taking out your 401k. And you can do the same thing on credit cards.
You can. You can get on bankrate.com, and on the right-hand side there's a drop-down. You can search for credit cards, balance transfer credit cards. There's always companies competing for your business. If you have good credit, here's an example where you can find right now 0 cost to transfer, 0% interest for 15 months credit cards. And you transfer the balance from these high interest credit cards to this. and you have 15 months where it's at 0%. That's a great deal. Now, at the end of 15 months, you're going to convert to a regular rate, and you should do all the research there. That's a great resource to find those. But you have to have credit and credit available in order to take advantage of that.
And it's very easy to get on the internet and find calculations about how you would take something and make sure that it's paid off within that time. So if you've got a 12-month or a 15-month or an 18-month window in which you've got low interest, you want to make sure it's fully paid off before the end of that. But that can be done. Doug, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for giving us some insight into this. Doug Flynn is the co-founder of Flynn Zito Capital Management. Okay, imagine trying to run a multi-million-dollar business legally without using a bank. That's what a lot of entrepreneurs have been doing in Colorado since pot was legalized. Now there could be a solution to that. Plus, more than a triple crown may be at stake this weekend. We'll look at why many hope California Chrome can turn horse racing into a good bet.